Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. Today we have a show that is part of our Help Situation Spotlight series. And this is a show, of course, and an entire series where you, community members, share questions, concerns, issues, fears, and we try to come up with and share some potential solution sets. So let's see what someone has asked about today. Our specific episode topic is, I am shy, but people think I am stuck up and a snob. What should I do? I am shy, but people think I am stuck up and a snob. What should I do? Now, this was a show topic that hit a little close to home for me personally. Anecdotally, I have experienced this challenge and lived through it for the majority of my memory of my life. Part of the challenge is that I am shy. And so certainly when I was younger and a child growing up and moving through elementary school and middle school and high school, I certainly was less self-assured, less experienced, and the shyness manifested itself in different ways than it does today. So, of course, being shy is just having my own interpretation, a little tad twinge of apprehension about sharing with others. So that's my positive definition of it. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy sharing with others, sharing my ideas and my feelings and their feelings. And of course, like everybody else, shy people love to share. We just have a little bit of a different approach and analysis for who we're ready to share information with and when we're ready to share. So we tend to be a little bit slower, or if we want to say a little bit more of a mature time frame before we start sharing. And we also tend to be more discerning about who we share with. So we're not maybe someone who goes out and shares with the largest quantity possible, the entire class, for example. While growing up, we might just have a select few people that we've decided we feel really comfortable with, and those are the people that we share with. So shyness, in my estimation, of course I'm somewhat biased, is a very normal and perfectly acceptable and fine way of being oriented to the world. It has a slightly different calculus for how we're going to share, when we're going to share, and who we're going to share with. That's it! Totally normal. Now the challenge, of course, depending on where you are in the world, what type of cultural expectations there are, shyness may or may not be an issue at all. In many parts of the world, their cultural expectation is that you're not going to overtly, explicitly, publicly start sharing your personal information. The expectation in many cultures is that it's expected that you're going to wait, and then with select few people in a very private basis, then you'll share. Other parts of the world have different cultures where the expectation is that, what? You're going to wait? No. Tell me about yourself. And in many parts of the world, when people say, tell me about yourself, they literally mean that. Tell me right now everything about yourself. And if you don't start immediately telling everything, where you live and what you do for a profession or for your nonprofit goals, who do you live with? Do you have any pets? What do you like to eat? I mean, if you don't start sharing, then they're going to start sharing, and they're going to share as much as they can in the time frame allotted. And again, a lot of this is cultural. It really is. A lot of it is also within an area or a geographic part of the world. There are even subcultures, right? So you may have an overall culture for the society at large, and then within that you'll have different subsets. And some subsects will expect you not to share everything with everyone, and immediately, and other cultures will expect you to do the exact same. So the stress really seems to only arise, right? The help situation where somebody's asking for what to do only seems to come up when you have sort of a conflict between what the expectation is and what your behavior is. And so, again, if you're in a part of the world where the expectation is you're going to share everything immediately with everyone, and that's what you do when you meet people, you say you're at some event. I know I was at a social event yesterday. It was really kind of interesting. It was one where people get together at this business, and you get grapes, you select grapes, and you make your own individual wine. So interesting, right? So anyway, it was a social event, and I only knew just maybe 2 people when I walked in. And so I had to decide, what's the right level of calibration for being social that I need to employ to try to make this as much fun and enjoyable for me and everybody else. So again, it depends on what part of the world you're in, it depends on what the cultural expectation is, it depends on the subculture of the group that you're with. I happen to be in the U.S. At this event, and so I know what the expectation is, and I got out there and I did my best. The expectation tends to be overall, comparatively speaking, in the U.S., when someone asks you, they stick their hand out. That's a lot of what the expectation is, the physical part of it, and they tell you their name. The expectation is that you're going to shake their hand, you're going to make eye contact and smile, and you better start talking and sharing. You better start doing it. So I was trying my best relative to the fact that I'm incredibly shy, right? And I've been that way my whole life. But I know the expectation, and I literally asked myself, right? So all the programs and all the things that we talk about and share about here in my work, I do apply this in my life. I live it. I believe it. I'm constantly trying to improve and learn new things. So I literally asked myself in my mind before I walked in there, I said, what do you want? And what did I want? I wanted to have fun. I did want to meet new people. The people that invited me, the few people that I knew, I wanted to make sure they understood how much I appreciated the invitation and how much fun I was having. And it was interesting. And so I thought about the goals, right, how to surpass the goals. And then I knew some of the things I had to focus on because I know the feedback that I've received my entire life, my interpretation is due to the shyness. And a lot of what I've received over my life as a young child and as a more mature adult, this part of my life, is that people they've said to me actually, that they think that I am stuck up, or I'm a snob, or I think I'm better than them, and that I, quote, don't speak, that I'm not, so that if I'm not sharing immediately, publicly, enthusiastically with people, even though my reason and explanation for it is that I really am shy, and I'm not just making that up. I mean, it's accurate. If people who've known me over my lifetime would say, yeah, she really is. The challenge is, though, that people who don't know you over your life, who just met you, they don't know, and they honestly probably, to be fair, why should they care about your life history, right? You're in a setting, and you need to make a decision before you get to that setting, whether it's social or professional. Last week, I was in some professional meetings where I was in groups where I maybe knew about a third of the people that I'd met before, and the other, 2/3 were brand new. And it was very similar to the social event. I had to sit I was working away from where I live, and so I had to sit in my hotel room. Didn't have to, but I chose to, and ask myself, what do you want? And I thought about my goals. Well, I want to meet these new people that I might be working on these different tasks with professionally. I want to make a positive impression. I want them to feel overall that it's a good thing that they might be working with me. I want to, make a good impression. So again, the same type of things. I knew. Now, this was a little bit more international crowd. It was still in the U.S. I was in a different part of the country, but it was a little bit more international crowd, and it was a little bit more professionally oriented crowd in a specific area of people who were very credentialed and very, very intelligent and savvy. And so I knew going into that, okay, then I have to fine-tune and make sure that I am sharing things that they would value in this professional setting. So I'm going to share information about my credentials in these professional areas. And then I also knew, because it was such an international crowd with people from all different parts of the world, that I needed to be willing to share my experiences in different parts of the world. And so that's what I did. But a lot of it was the same. So shake your hand, stick your hand out, shake people's hands, eye contact, smiling. In the U.S. especially, in a lot of parts of the world where extroversion, right? The extroverts are people who gain energy from being around other people. These are very positive and expected traits. And there's some data that even says the majority of the population are extroverts. And I've done other programs about being introverted and extroverted and things of that nature. So basically, whether it's last night at a social event or it's last week at a professional event, the bottom line is I have to walk into rooms with people where I know very few people. And for me, when I'm not in a setting where I'm performing, right, where I'm giving a speech or I'm speaking to a classroom of students or I'm in a courtroom, as a litigator presenting my legal case, those are different. I don't ever get nervous or shy in those settings because I'm not talking to people one-on-one. I'm not doing that interaction where there's the expectation that I, quote, share, and people will get frustrated or displeased with me if they feel I'm not sharing enough quickly enough, right? Because if it's a work situation where I'm speaking publicly, right, either as a professor, as a keynote speaker, as a corporate trainer, as a lecturer, as a host of or appearing on a television show or a radio show, there isn't that expectation. It's not where somebody one-on-one or small groups of people are coming to me and having a cultural almost demand that I start telling them personal things. It's not like that at all. It is where I'm speaking, but I'm speaking to the group about the things that I've determined ahead of time that are relevant to whatever the work task is. So there's zero of this situation where someone's going to put me in a situation where I'm having to go through my own calculus, right, in my head of, like, do I want to share that personal information with somebody that I just met? That doesn't happen in these work settings, right, where I'm speaking to a group or I'm speaking on a television show. So that's totally different, and I'm totally calm. And I think part of the challenge when I meet people socially, especially if they've seen any of my work in these other settings, is they don't believe that I'm shy, because their argument is, well, I've seen you. I saw you speak on stage in a big event, or I saw you on a big, a live national television show, so you're not telling me the truth that you're shy. My argument is that, yeah, I am. And the reason why this shyness doesn't impact those settings is because it's controlled and it's unidirectional in a lot of ways, right? I don't have somebody coming in those settings and asking me about off-topic issues where I have to try to figure out really quickly, do I want to tell them, am I single, or do I have any dogs? Or I don't have to do that, because we're talking about a well-defined issue. We're talking about, the keynote speech, or we're talking about the topic that the television show is addressing, or we're talking about, a specific issue that I'm discussing as a professor from the course curriculum. So there's none of that fear or apprehension. And shyness doesn't equate to lack of self-confidence. In my personal experience and in a lot of personal experience. Now, people think that. People think, oh, well, somebody doesn't speak up, it means they don't have anything to say. It means they don't believe in themselves. Not necessarily. Now, there are certainly instances where that's accurate, where the person is shy and they also have a situation where they are struggling with their own self-esteem, and they're part of why they don't speak up is not so much that they're trying to calculate what to share and with whom, is also that they're thinking potentially, oh, what I have to share is stupid, or I don't want to share because I would be embarrassed, people will laugh at me, or they won't like what I say. That's a totally different set of issues. And so, again, just from my own personal experience, that's not what's going on in my head. I'm not worried or fearful that I'm the biggest idiot or loser, and if I start talking, the people will laugh at me. Now, it's happened that I have been really perceived and maybe have been the stupidest person in a room. It's happened that I have said things that people have in some instances, not recently, but have really shared with me, that especially socially, like, you're an idiot. And they've, made it clear that whatever it was I was talking about was not interesting or important. Mostly that happened when I was younger, and I have a lot of interests and ideas that as an adult, of course, I get to express in my work that are about, specific business topics, or my interpretation of some historical event, or my, sort of philosophical wondering about, free will or some political issue. That's the kind of thing that when I talked about when I was younger, kids would laugh at me because they wanted to talk about, who was dating somebody or taking somebody to prom, or things that I didn't, my personality, I naturally don't spend a lot of time thinking about things like that. So people would laugh at me because the stuff I talked about sounded really nerdy and weird. I still talk about the same probably nerdy and weird things, just as an adult. I'm in areas and professionally where the nerdy, weird things actually are the topic. So it kind of all has worked out. When I was, again, as a younger person, I was just sort of out of sync with what sort of the popular kids and the masses of people were really focused on. I'm a bit, in my own mind, in a positive way, I'm a nerd. I like ideas, so I wasn't necessarily keeping up with what was happening in all of pop culture, and I didn't even. I still I remember a time it must have been about ninth grade, so I was about 14, and I've never been somebody to follow fashion or know much about what's in style. I mean, I have a certain idea of what I think looks nice. I do like to wear certain types of bright colors, and I like to accessorize as I'm older and adult, and I wear suits and things like that for work, but I still don't know and keep up with what's in style and out of style and in fashion. So this time when I was about 14 in school, there were some tennis shoes, trainers, some people call them, parts of the world, but tennis shoes. And there was some certain brand that was like the brand that we were, I guess, if you were cool as a kid, you were supposed to have. And I didn't even know what they were talking about. Like, I had not paid any attention. And I'll never forget the other kids in the class. It was in a gym class. And they were laughing because they were saying something about the shoes and how they were describing it or talking about it. And I actually asked, well, what exactly is that? And everyone just starts laughing, because how stupid is it, right? Like, that's the most important thing, is that everybody knows what that shoe is. And most kids already had those shoes, right? And we're talking about different types of those shoes. I didn't even know what the shoe was. So that's embarrassing, but whatever. And what I mean by whatever is that happened. I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I just shared it with the world. It's an example of, yes, sometimes you do open your mouth and people do laugh at you. But I didn't take that as a way to change who I am. I just took it as an experience, and of course it hurt my feelings, and I went home and cried. I didn't cry in front of other kids. And I remember it. But what I did, I think, even if I wasn't totally consciously focused on it as an adult, is I started to take all the things that are just sort of natural for me, the weird ideas I have and things I'm interested in, and that's what I build my work around. And so it all is a win-win, right? And I'm rarely in those situations where people are asking me about things that they perceive to be what everybody knows that I don't know. And it's the same thing. If somebody asked me today about what's the in fashion or shoe or something, I wouldn't know it today either, but I'm just very rarely in those situations. And of course, in most of my work situations, I'm talking about these controlled issues about business or law or decision making or organizational development or strategic leadership or whatever. And I'm not ever going to be in that situation where somebody is asking me about the shoe that I don't know about, and then I feel nervous. That's one of the reasons why I'm not shy in all those professional settings. In these one-on-one settings where I'm not performing, right? Like, I'm not litigating or giving a lecture as a professor or as a keynote speaker, but we're just meeting people in rooms. It is hard because it puts that same potential for being ridiculed. But for me, that's secondary. My main issue is, it's just, I'm always thinking, like, what do I feel comfortable sharing with people I just met, and understanding culturally kind of calibrate what I'm comfortable with what people expect. The challenge, in my estimation, of when people say you're stuck up or you're a snob, and your argument is no, I'm just shy, is because they don't see it. Meaning, if the cultural expectation is that you're quiet and you don't go into some long narrative about your personal life and start pulling out pictures of your spouse and your kids and your grandkids and your dogs, if the expectation is not to do that and you don't do that, then you fit in. If the expectation is to do that and you don't do it, then you have a problem, because people think, why don't you do that? And many people aren't going to think that you didn't do it because you're shy. What they're going to think, maybe, depending on the culture, is you didn't do it because you think you're better than them, that you think you're stuck up, or not that you think you're stuck up, you are stuck up, right? You're a snob. And they take it as something that you've done as an affront to them, to insult them, right? Because the expectation is what we're all doing, right? We have eye contact, we're smiling, we're shaking hands vigorously, and we're telling these long, elaborate stories about all of our personal life to somebody we've known like 3 minutes. But if that's the expectation and you don't adhere to it, then they need a reason for why you didn't do it. And again, so much of what people do is we immediately start thinking about ourselves. So we don't think, why didn't the person do what the cultural expectation is? Maybe it's something that is unique to them, or maybe it's the way that they process information. People don't think that often. What they'll do is they'll think, oh, what's wrong with them? Why are they acting like this? Is something, do they think that they're better than everybody else? Everybody else is doing what you're supposed to, which is to share immediately everything. Or they'll get very angry and they'll internalize it and they'll think, oh, they just think they're too good to speak to me. Oh, they think they're a stuck-up snob and they don't want to tell me anything because they think I'm not worth it. They think they're better than I am. And it's the same sort of very negative spiral that is a total obstacle to achieving whatever your goals are at the social event or the work event, which I shared. I do that in my own head. I literally will sit there and ask myself, what are your goals? So what can we do? I don't know how much you can, quote, change the shyness. Now, there's a lot of information that you can go out and research and find and discuss and analyze that may help. You may feel like the part of the equation you need to, quote, fix to get the solution for is you, right? I'm just going to change where I'm not shy, and then I'll never have this problem again. It's possible. Anything's possible. I've never put a lot of energy into that, mostly because I actually like the way I process information. I really do. All the weird things that other people teased me about, certainly when I was younger, that are kind of, who wants to go read biographies for fun? I do. And certainly not no one, but very few kids at that time wanted to publicly talk about that. They wanted to talk about, fashion or whatever was popular in pop culture. And so the fact that I was not necessarily up to speed on those things was something that was, ridiculed. But I liked the ideas. It made me happy then to go to the library all day. I've shared this in other programs and many other settings. One of my favorite memories from growing up, one of the most positive things that was always consistently there for me, and I've shared in other programs that my father had work that we moved around the world. My father is in the U.S. military, and so I was born in Germany, and then we moved literally like about every 2 years we moved to another part of the world, another part of the U.S. I've lived in a lot of places, so I was always changing schools. I was always in a brand new part of the world. I was always trying to learn a new regional culture and try to figure things out quickly. So that's also probably what contributed to some of it too, right? That I was always walking into rooms where I knew no one, because every time you're in a new school, it's what happens. And my takeaway, though, of course, is that I liked the ideas and I loved the library. The library was that one childhood constant. No matter where we were in the world, there's a library. And I can go to that library, and most of them are on the Dewey Decimal System, if not all, and I understand how it works, and I can just sit in my books, and it made me happy. And I still love it. The great thing about the Internet, of course, is so much of the joy of having all the access to resources is at my fingertips, and that's even, in a way, more exciting for me, right? So I don't want to change that. I never really researched it enough to think, well, I'll just change the way I process information, right? I'll change the way that I do my calculus about sharing everything. I actually don't mind or feel uncomfortable with that way that I like to take my time. I like to take my time and figure out, is that someone I want to share a whole bunch of personal things with that are important to me. Partially because we talk about in a lot of other programs, there's a whole undercurrent of currency of information. Now, of course, there's a currency of information about expected information about your business, your data, your credentials, your competitors' revenue. I mean, there's data that we all expect to know, transparency. But there's an undercurrent of information and data about people's private information that people use for gossiping, for doing things to sabotage people at work, for blackmailing people. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, these things are sometimes imagined, but in many instances it's true, right? So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for all of us, no matter whether you're naturally sort of inclined to be shy or you've never had a moment in your life of feeling shy, to ration what you tell people. And even, and during World War II in the U.S., they even had slogans, right, where they were trying to teach people, don't tell everybody everything, which is difficult in the United States, right, because it's such, again, a cultural expectation, right? Hi! And then people launch into long, detailed stories about kind of all kinds of private information. And they had the slogan during World War II, right? Loose lips sink ships. Loose lips sink ships. And what was that? That was trying to tell people, Hey, don't go tell everything you know to everybody, because you just met those people and maybe they're a secret spy agent for another country. Like, we don't know. And if you keep talking, the loose lips, right, literally just telling everything you know, you could tell somebody something and you, for all you know, thinking that you're being friendly, that's somebody who is going to take the information, and now they're going to use the information you were telling them about where you work at a factory or what your, relative is doing in the war, and use that then to literally find targets and sink ships, right, to hurt your own nation's military efforts. And the idea is basically trying to get people to stop being so open with information, right? Loose lips sink ships. Shh, be quiet. And so I'm trying to use that as some sort of support for my argument that there's something to consider about, just in your own way, what makes you comfortable, stopping and thinking about what you're sharing, because you never know, right? Not paranoia, not anything unhealthy, but pick and choose what you're going to tell and what you're comfortable with the whole entire world knowing, and what you're comfortable with keeping to yourself. Now, I'm not even touching social media and the way that people use technology in this program to deal with these issues of shyness and expressing literally the most private things that you could imagine to the entire world and the consequences thereof. Those are totally different programs and fascinate me. But this core issue, though, of who do you tell things to and how quickly do you tell them things and what do you tell them is an issue. And what can you do if people think you're stuck up and a snob? Well, part of the calculus, of course, is you could try not to be shy, quote unquote, and then you'll just tell everything to everybody that's culturally expected, and then you won't have this problem where people think that you are looking down on them, or that you think you're too good, quote unquote, too good to speak to them, or that you're a stuck up or you're a snob. So that's part of it. I, again, personally have never really put any energy into that, because I actually like the way that I think, and I enjoy all of my weird ideas, which now that I'm an older, more mature adult, many of the ideas are my work, so it all kind of works out. And I don't mind taking my time to share things with people at all. It makes me more comfortable, and I feel it's just a more appropriate approach to life, right? Why, let something be your private information. Let there be some mystery. You don't have to tell everything to everyone. The other part of the equation then is, what can you do to stop people from thinking you're stuck up and a snob, right? So if I'm not going to change the shy aspect of the shy variable of the equation, what can I do to change the stuck up and snob variable of the equation? That's the part that I do encourage you to think about. Now, what I've tried is this: whether or not it would work for you, I don't know, but this is about potential solutions. One of the things that I've done is I've tried to think about this from the other side of the equation. So I'm naturally comfortable, or I'm in a culture where I'm just used to, I'm conditioned to just share everything immediately with everyone. So that's the sort of standard, hey, this is who I am, this is where I live, this is how long I've been married, this is what my health challenge is, this is what happened to my grandkid, this is what happened at work, this is, that's just sort of, if that's the cultural expectation and that's what somebody does, whether because that's naturally what they would do with their personality, or that's what they've been conditioned to do and they just do it because that they feel like that's what's expected, is really irrelevant. How do they perceive it then when the person doesn't go ahead and go along with that, right? Thinking about it from that side, not my own position where I feel like, well, gee, what does it matter that I don't tell you everything about me, right? Thinking about it from the perspective of the person who is doing what they perceive to be what's expected, and then the other person isn't, then you can see why they're displeased, or there's conflict when you're not doing what's expected, and they don't know why. And so they're gonna, if they don't know why at all, they many times will go right to these ideas that, well, there's something about you that either thinks that they're not worthy of you sharing, right? That you're too good, quote unquote, to speak to them, which is very offensive. And the idea of also reciprocity. There they are telling you all this stuff, right? They're sharing, and when you don't share, then it's almost as if you're rejecting what they've proffered to you. You're not reciprocating. So you can see from their perspective why it's a big deal, and why then they're going to go say to other people, well, I just talked to her. You don't even want to bother. Well, she's so stuck up. What a snob. Okay, because they felt rebuffed, and for many people when that happens, and when I'm rejected or rebuffed, or people don't reciprocate, how do I respond to that? Either I feel that bad about myself, or I turn around and label that person as the problem. I mean, that's a binary choice for many people. So to try to change the dynamic, you can do a couple of things. One, even if you're not the biggest talker, meaning you don't necessarily want to share everything about who you are and your experiences and your feelings and your dreams and everything with someone you've just known for 90 seconds, that doesn't stop you from being a better listener. Remember, most people enjoy talking about themselves immensely, and there's great data on how much of people's time is spent talking about themselves. It's depending on the culture. So based on, again, from a U.S. culture, it's pretty substantial. People love talking about themselves. One way you can get around this thing where people think you're stuck up and a snob is change the dynamic where they feel like you're reciprocating and they feel like they're getting the attention and they feel like you, quote, think they're good enough, but you're not actually talking and sharing much. What you're doing is you're talking, but you're asking. So instead of the person sitting, introducing themselves and, I live in, such and such town in New Mexico, and I've lived there 14 years, and this is my husband, and he used to work at the local utility company, and he has 3 sisters. Okay, so they're talking, right? Part of what you could do is that you just exactly mirror that and start talking about where you live and your family situation, if you have a spouse, and what they do for a living, and how many siblings they have. That's one thing you could do. But if you're shy, you're probably not going to feel comfortable with that because you just met them and you're still calculating whether or not how much you want to share and what you want to share, okay? So to get around this challenge, all you need to do is start talking, which is what's really important, but instead of talking about you where you're giving your data, you're talking about them. So you need to say one thing personal. So something like, I've been to that town in New Mexico. What a great town. It's so pretty. Boom. You said something about something that they talked about, and it was personal. You said you went there. Awesome. Now pivot, and redirect the conversation back to them. So immediately I'm going to follow up with something like, wow, now, were you born in that part of the country? Were you born in New Mexico? Is that something were your parents and grandparents from there? Now, I've done a whole bunch of things. I've added several questions for them to answer, right? And I've also made them feel, the majority of the time, that I truly am invested in this because I want to know more. I'm not satisfied with knowing about just you, your spouse, and your spouse's siblings. I want to know about your parents and your grandparents and where you were born. This is wonderful for somebody who loves to share, right? It makes them feel good about themselves. Now they have many more things to talk about, so this gives them lots of things to keep talking. All the time that they're talking, you want to show you're reciprocating, but you're not reciprocating, of course, by telling all your personal information. You're reciprocating lots of eye contact. That's culturally expected. Make supportive noises and sounds where you show that you're engaged and you're participating. So the person's talking and they're, oh my goodness, well, in terms of my grandparents, my mom's mom, she was from Wyoming. Okay, so they're talking. Now what you're doing is maintaining eye contact. You're using your body language, right? So you're facing them, don't turn away. And you're relaxed, your shoulders are down, your facial muscles are relaxed, and then you're going to make these supportive and engaging verbal cues, sounds, to show them that you're riveted, right? So they're talking, and and then on my mom's side, my dad, he was originally from Florida, okay? And so this is so you've got the physical, relaxed facial expression, eye contact, and you've got your relaxed body language where you're oriented. You turned your body, including your feet, toward them, and then you make the supportive vocalizations like, oh, yeah, oh, wow, like that, okay, interspersed. This will work. You can do this. I've done it in some situations for hours, and it's amazing how little you actually have to say about yourself. Every once in a while, say one thing that relates to what they said that is personal. Oh, I've been to that place, or one time, I ate at that restaurant, or oh, right, and then redirect it back to them. This gives them everything that they're looking for in most instances where they feel like it's reciprocated because you were looking, you were listening, you were making all those vocal assurances. Yes, wow, interesting. I love it. Something of that nature. So they feel reciprocated. They feel like they, quote, got to know you. Now, the weird thing is, of course, they really didn't get anything from you. They got a little bit that you'd been to that one place, or maybe you'd eaten at that restaurant, but it was much less than what they gave you in terms of data. Yet, it is ideally is a win-win. So they're going to walk away and think, wow, that was really friendly. Wow. Because you were attentive. You were listening. When you ask those really specific follow-up questions, it shows them that you really listen. Remember, so many people feel that nobody hears them, that nobody really listens to them. And when you do that, you really, really listen, and then you're asking these follow-up questions based on what they said, and you're giving them all of this affirmation and engagement with your body language, with the vocalizations, and it just makes them happy. In most instances, it totally works. So instead of it being I'm shy and people think I'm stuck up and a snob, it's I'm shy and people think I'm a great listener and really friendly. That is a way for you to redirect things. The last thing I might mention is something that I do in some settings, because sometimes I'll meet people who've seen me in some other work setting. They have an expectation that I'm going to be a really big personality and boisterous and things of this nature, but I'm not. I'm shy, right? I'm a big personality and boisterous in settings where it's part of the job, but I'm not like that one-on-one. I'm pretty quiet. So I will literally say to people, oh, it's so great to meet you, and they're talking, and then I'll say something, like, I'm so glad to be here, but, I'm really shy. So coming to, this meeting or coming to this dinner party, it's hard. I literally say the words, I am shy. And it's amazing what that can do. Now, some people still sort of will say to me, especially, again, if they've met me or seen me in these other work settings, they'll say, oh, you're not shy. I've seen you, whatever, give a speech, or I saw you on some TV show. Well, and then I'll quickly give an answer and go, well, that was work, right? But me one-on-one, I am really shy. That actually helps. Because especially when people have a heightened expectation of what your behavior is going to be like based on something they saw at work, when that's not who you are all the time, it really can help. And then I use all the other skills I just talked about. So I'm the listening, the follow-up questions, high level of body language, oriented physically toward them, the vocalizations. Those are all tools that I have used, I believe, somewhat successfully. Now, there are still people that I'm sure would say to you, I met that lady last night, or I met that lady last week. She was horrible. She was stuck up in a snob. Okay, well, you're never going to get everyone to think the same thing, but I have better outcomes than I had before when I wasn't engaged in these very deliberate body language, vocalizations, follow-up questions, where people feel that we're reciprocating, that we're sharing, they feel like that I care about them, because I do. If I'm asking questions, I am interested, right? And then if it's a situation where I feel it might be helpful, I will actually own up to, which I hate, right? I mean, the shyness part of me doesn't like telling people I'm shy, but I've weighed the options, and I've determined in some settings it's actually more beneficial for me. And I say to people, I am shy. And I think it does help begin to give an alternative explanation for then if I do seem less of what they expected, right? I don't want to let people down, but who you are in one professional setting isn't necessarily who you are in a different, personal setting. So, or one-on-one business setting. So those are the tools and techniques. I strongly suggest that you consider them, and I've got other programs where we go through the details of active listening, and we put out some programs that sort of model this and give you examples, and I hope you take part in those. As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information or to share show ideas or feedback, and I am so grateful and appreciative that you joined me today for this program. Thank you.